Welcome back to Unit 3, Lesson 5. Today we're going to be talking about mutations. And by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to define mutation, define genotype versus phenotype, explain neutral, positive, and negative mutations, and explain point, frameshift, insertion, and deletion mutations. So to start with, let's discuss what a mutation is. When you guys think about it, you might even be able to come up with some examples of mutations, if not real-life ones, comic-based ones. But the key is that mutations, or a mutation, is a change, typically a mistake, in the genetic code at the DNA level. Now there's other places mutations can occur. They can occur during transcription or translation. But these mutations are rarely ever seen because they're not inheritable. It's when a change occurs at the DNA level and it is inheritable that it becomes noticeable. And by inheritable, we could mean from one cell generation to the next in something like cancer, or from one organism generation to the next, so from parent to child. In something like, say, hemophilia. Okay. So simply, a mutation is just a change or a mistake in the genetic code of the DNA. Not always a bad thing, but when we're talking about it normally with humans, we're looking at genetic diseases that have negative effects. Now, to understand, we can describe mutations in several ways. We have to understand the words genotype and phenotype. Genotype quite literally translates to the type of, you guessed it, genes. It's looking at your genetic information and basically asking, are there any mutations? Or changes from one generation to the next. Your genotype is what makes you who you are. The phenotype, maybe not quite as obvious. Pheno, referring to your physical appearance, is type of physical traits. In other words, what do you look like? I mean, this can be as obvious as what color are your eyes, to what do you look like on a biochemical level, are all your proteins properly functioning? And of course, your genotype dictates your phenotype. That's assuming no modifications. You're not wearing contacts, you're not dyeing your hair, that type of thing. Okay. So when we look at mutations, sometimes we describe them based on your phenotype or how they affect your phenotype, and sometimes we describe them based on how they affect your genotype. We're first going to look at the ones based on how they affect your phenotype. And they fall into three main classes: neutral mutations, negative mutations, and positive mutations. Sometimes neutral mutations are also called silent mutations. But that's not quite accurate. So we're going to be careful, because silent more appropriately refers to genotype level. When we're talking at a phenotypic level, we prefer to use the word neutral. Okay? So what neutral mutation is like, it neither helps nor harms an organism's chance of survival. So it's something that changes its appearance but doesn't necessarily help or hurt it. And the example I like to use is if you have a bunny rabbit. Just quickly draw out a little bunny here. And its paw happens to have black paw pads, and then it has an offspring with a mutation. And that offspring another bunny rabbit. I'm trying to draw fast, so it's not the neatest. Okay, let's be honest, I'm just not the best artist. Its paw, when it mutates, happens to have instead pink paw pads. Really, this shouldn't affect its chance of survival unless all the other bunny rabbits are mean and look at it and say, I don't like your pink paw pads, and won't date it and reproduce with it. Odds of that in a rabbit population, not very high. Okay, so whether black paw pads, pink paw pads, doesn't really affect its chance of survival. That would be a neutral mutation. In contrast, a negative mutation is one that at the physical level harms an organism's chance of survival. So let's stick with bunny rabbits because, well, I can kind of draw a bunny rabbit. I said kind of. Okay. If you imagine in the Arctic, you have your wild type bunny. This does not mean they go out and party every Friday night. Wild type bunny just means the predominant genetic form that's found. And then it has a offspring with a mutation. And that offspring's mutation turns it into a, we'll say, a pink bunny. Well, you can imagine in the Arctic, hot pink bunny is going to stick out like a sore thumb. And all the wolves will be able to see the pink bunny in the Arctic, and unfortunately, pink bunny won't last very long. That is a negative mutation. We don't usually see the effects of negative mutations because they die off before they can reproduce, and they don't tend to accumulate in the natural population. A little bit different in humanity, where we protect our weaker from nature. Okay. And the last one is a positive mutation, and at this point you can probably guess that a positive mutation helps an organism survive. So it enhances an organism's chance of survival. So in this case, if we imagine a bunny wanders up into the Arctic and it starts out I think I should have stuck to how I was drawing the bunny before. Looked a little bit better than this version. This is a vicious looking bunny. Okay, and it's a brown bunny. And it wanders into the Arctic. Okay, I'm going to admit, that is a horrible bunny, but we'll live with it. Okay, brown bunny. He was the wild type, even though he looks more like a mutant. We'll just accept that. And he's in the Arctic. Wanders into Arctic. The brown's not going to be such a good thing, but maybe he's a good fast bunny, and he's sneaky and he hides away from his prey long enough to find a mate, and then he has offspring with a mutation. And that mutant bunny is born white. And now it's harder for the prey to see, so it survives, and over time actually the mutant becomes the wild type if it is really a positive mutation and it can dominate in that environment. Okay, so those are the three types of mutations based on looking at phenotype. Neutral, neither harms nor hurts or helps a chance of survival. Negative, harms an organism's chance of survival. And positive, enhances the organism's chance of survival. We're just going to stop there. We'll pick up the rest in part 2 of the video.